What was more difficult or required you to significantly change your way of thinking and doing things? Did you expect it, or was it a surprise? Story 1. Getting back into the dating scene. I met my ex-wife when I was 19 and found myself single again at 40. I missed the entire onset of online dating and had no idea what to do. Those first dates were something. After my first date, I got back home, plopped down on the couch and thought to myself, is this what dating is like now? Story 2, having money. And I do not mean that in a misogynistic way, like, women are expensive, am I right? My ex was financially abusive, and we were constantly living paycheck to paycheck. We threw away so much money on interest payments, and she insisted that is just how couples live. When we separated, we split the debt. I took out a low-interest loan and handed her a check for my half of the debt. I paid off the loan pretty quickly, and it was strange. I could just go out to lunch on a random day and not worry about spending $15. That was such a foreign thing to me. Story 3. Honestly, the worst part was being without my children every other week. A lot of my identity was being a father, stocking the house every other week. I pretty much stopped cooking for myself. Somehow I did it. I guess the empty house was the hardest to get used to. Story 4. Finding time to take care of all the adult responsibilities you have to manage alone is challenging. Working full-time and finding time to do laundry, dishes, cooking, shopping, house cleaning, paying bills, protecting retirement, maintaining a social life, and working on your hobbies to stay an interesting person is exhausting. There is no one to delegate tasks to. Takes practice. Story 5. Affordability is a challenge when living in a high-cost area. Where we live, it takes two significant incomes to afford a basic house. We were, and still are, both high earners, but divorce meant renting instead of owning again anytime soon, kids sharing a bunk bed instead of having their own rooms, and apartment living rather than a house with a yard. My ex and I remain very close and amicable, and our kids are well-adjusted. We support each other well, so many of the difficulties others experience have not been as bad for us. However, some days I do feel guilty that my kids are sharing a bedroom right now. I also appreciate that this is an incredibly first-world problem. Story 6. Accepting that I am truly better off without her. She hurt me in profound ways that I did not even understand until it was already over. My future is mine and mine alone. I will never lose touch with who I am ever again. Story 7. I had built up a net worth of over $3 million by age 59. I needed to give more than half of it to my ex-wife of 35 years because she wanted to end our marriage. This included my home of nearly 30 years, which I had improved over time with features such as a large Carrera marble walk-in shower with a German rain shower, a Japanese robot bidet, and other amenities. I now rent a decent condominium, but my standard of living has definitely declined. I see attractive women around. Some even show interest. I avoid that because I do not want to take the risk of being financially exploited again. Overall, my life is boring and predictable. I am a corporate vice president and work from home. I am currently sitting in a coffee shop passing time on Reddit. Story 8. Sleeping alone. I am not talking about sex, just being alone in a bed. It was months before I could sleep a full night again, and to this day I still do not like it. Story 9. Convincing someone that I was the abused versus being the abuser is difficult. Nobody wants to believe that a 6'2" man was hit by a 5' woman for 10 years before he slapped her, and instantly received a criminal record for domestic violence, while his abuser got away with a decade of unchecked violence and affairs. Story 10. For me, it was the fact that she had been preparing for it and had made plans, whereas for me it came out of the blue and threw my entire life into turmoil. The worst part was the lack of daily access to my children. That killed me. Story 11. Reconnecting with all the friends and family she made me cut all contact with because, if you love me, you will do it. Story 12. I am still in an odd position because I was and still am deeply in love with my ex. She came home one day and told me she had met someone else and it was over. My life has not been the same since. Everything is different. I feel the loss of her in my bones. But I could never be with her again because of what she did. Story 13. Learning that the things I wanted to do were not unreasonable or selfish. Little things like buying a tool for the garden, right through to all the renovations that had to be done before we sold the house, even going out with friends who were not her family. We had a massive argument about whether I needed new shoes one time when they had literal holes in them. Took me a long time, and still does occasionally, to buy something for myself like clothes or a book I would like to read, without feeling guilty that I was being selfish. We were not poor either. There was no reason for it, and she certainly did not hold herself to the same standards. Story 14, going from seeing your in-laws with whom you had a great relationship twice a week to maybe twice a year pretty much overnight is difficult. It feels like half of your family and many friends just disappear overnight. I did not realize how lonely it would be, especially since her family was closer, as was our family. Story 15. Reorienting your mind to realizing you are alone now is a big shift. It really affects how you do things. No more asking, "Hey, while you are up, can you grab me something?" Now, you have to do everything yourself. This was intimidating at first, but I have come to really enjoy it. Story 16. Our friend community became fractured. It was us and two other couples, and we did many things together. Holidays, weekend barbecues, birthdays, game nights, and more. The way things unfolded, it took me quite a while for the other four to allow me back into their lives. Before then, ongoing chronic depression, followed by divorce and community fallout, was the most intensely painful and difficult experience I've ever had. After about 9 months, I finally admitted to myself that my mental health was serious enough to seek treatment at an inpatient facility, where I stayed for a month. Fortunately, I was able to recover successfully after that. I found a new community and repaired relationships with those old friends. It's still not the same, but I am very grateful they accepted me back into their lives. Story 17. Being stuck in the lonely moments of living alone. I was married for 19 years. My ex just stopped loving me. She wouldn't try counseling and just wanted me out of her life. I got my own place. Transitioning was different but manageable. Those lonesome days of wondering why I was not enough were painful for me. Story 18. Being alone. You dedicate so much of your life to being a husband and a father. Then all of a sudden it is all over. You learn to be yourself again. Story 19. The vacuum where daily married life used to be now must be filled by myself. I turned to alcohol, work, and loneliness to fill the void. Story 20. Being without my son all the time was difficult. Once we adjusted to the custody schedule, we were fine. I had him every Friday through Sunday and Monday through Friday during the summers. That was another adjustment, not having free time to hang out on weekends. When I started dating, I scheduled my dates around my son's schedule, and that worked. Also, to get things done on weekends, I included him in doing chores. For example, if I painted a wall, I showed him how to paint and gave him a small section of the wall. Toddlers don't paint very well, but he learned about taking care of a home. Story 21. Not being miserable all the time and beginning to enjoy life again. It was so good to get rid of the dead weight. Story 22. We chose nesting for our children. The children did not move between parents. Instead, the parent came and went from where the children lived. Living out of a laundry basket was tiresome. The house was a duplex. The ex lived downstairs while the children lived upstairs. During the weeks I was with the children, the ex stayed away, and I moved in upstairs. I bought a house in the next town to be close by during my weeks away from the children. Also, some people I thought were friends were not. One visited town and stayed with the ex downstairs, and I did not even know they were in town. I was literally sleeping 10 feet away, directly above, and I did not know they were in town. Story 23. Honestly, it was learning to relax and getting back into the habit of being in control of my own time. Getting home from work did not mean being bombarded with issues and demands. Texts and calls during the day were not her announcing or going on about some imagined crisis. My free time was mine, but somehow that did not feel right. We were not even married that long, but I felt like I was turning my real self on and off depending on where I was or who I was with. Took me a bit to regain my balance afterwards. Story 24. Being happy turns out to be very easy to do, but also very difficult to accept. Moreover, you realize how much more you get out of life simply by being happy. It includes all the things you wanted before but were unhappy because of. Story 25. I could write a book on this. The silence. There were times I missed the arguments just because the silence was relentless. Having alcohol in the house. My ex would drink anything we bought immediately. Now, I can look through a cabinet and not remember when I bought that bottle of wine. Not having crushing credit card debt. Getting a divorce decimated my retirement savings. Even if I never get to retire, it will have been worth it. For me, divorce was a gift. It took me a couple of years of focused planning and work, but I was able to rebuild my life into something I am proud of. I am remarried to the girl of my dreams. Life is good. I did not expect it. It just came out of my mouth during an argument. I made the decision in a split second, and that was that. Story 26. Parenting alone and working full-time. I did not have any immediate family. Fortunately, I had a lot of support from my former spouse's parents. Story 27. I got married at 22 and divorced at 44. The thing that caught me off guard the most was how desirable I had become during those years I was married. I had my pick of the litter, so to speak, and it was not that way when I was younger. Story 28. All that silence. Mostly, I went through a period where I wanted nothing to do with women. I worked on my own issues and came out the other side. Expensive but worth it. Story 29. For me, it's the desire to let go and move on, but not being fully there emotionally. I was hurt deeply in my marriage, and she eventually was the one to end it, but a part of me still wants to love and take care of her, even though she hurt me so deeply and never reciprocated love until a few months before the divorce. I want to have someone to provide for and take care of. I know it's not right to feel selfish for providing for myself, but if I'm not providing for someone else, then what is the significance? Story 30. Not seeing my kids the whole time was the hardest. I drive a 60-mile round trip 3 weekdays a week to see them after work, and then visit them each day of the weekend. I did this for 7 years. Now I have my own place, and I have them at my house for 3 weekends out of 4. Story 31. Realizing that the silence in the house was not peace but loneliness. Took me months to learn how to enjoy my own company again. Story 32. Not sure I would call it a difficult adjustment, but actually getting a paycheck and not having it disappear on unnecessary expenses. Story 33. Figuring out what it meant and how to be myself. I was deeply focused on doing what she wanted to keep the peace. I lost myself, my hobbies, and my peace. Story 34. It was an extremely stressful, embarrassing, and major failure. After about 10 years alone, I started enjoying the solitude. Story 35. Not having the children there when I got home was strange. I was used to the noise and playing with them all the time. It just felt too quiet without them. The ex-partner did not miss a thing. It was a huge relief that she finally left. Story 36. The small kitchen in my new apartment when I moved out was a change. I was so accustomed to a large kitchen with all the utensils, pots, and pans in the right spots and a full-sized oven. Relearning how to cook for myself and for one person instead of a family of 4 was a challenge. Story 37. I did not have any children with my ex, so that was not an issue. Suddenly, not having to worry about keeping someone happy all the time was amazing. Getting back into dating was fun. I was in graduate school, so having some relaxed roommates was nice. On the other hand, no matter who you were married to, you will always feel like you made a huge mistake and that people are going to judge you. Divorce is always hard, and the scars and anger last for a long time. You will need to see a counselor. Story 38. Budgeting with child support and alimony was challenging. I essentially had to pay more to spend more time with my son. My ex originally wanted 1 weekend a month, maybe 2. As I offered more money, we agreed on joint custody and 50-50 time sharing. It was difficult to figure out how to make it all work during the first couple of years. Story 39. Singlehood, along with the people you maintain around you, is a completely different lifestyle. It also takes time to adjust to things like cooking, shopping, cleaning, doing household chores, being by yourself, and how you spend holidays and time off or go on vacations. It's not for everyone. And many divorced men get lonely, reclusive, or develop bad habits. Thankfully, I had a plan. Recommitting to my career, finding alternative sources of income through investing, learning new skills I wanted and needed to learn, exploring new hobbies, traveling, engaging in sports, working out, getting a pet, making new friendships, volunteering, mentoring, and building new relationships. I approached these with a mission. Marriage was the worst decision I ever made, followed by the best move, divorce, which opened up a whole new life I didn't think was possible. I became a happy person again, and even my relationship with my children improved greatly. They finally came to know me as the fun man most thought I was but never showed it. Story 40. Getting used to being free again. Accepting that my life just gets 1000% better. Wishing it had happened years ago. Wondering why I did it in the first place. Marriage is a moronic idea. Never ever get married. Story 41. To be honest, we were already like roommates who barely spoke to each other. Felt good to move on. What is difficult is the alimony, and I do not really think about much else. On the other hand, I have been mostly single since then, and I do not think I am ready for another relationship. Story 42. I do not get to see my children in person due to the distance. Sometimes I feel upset about it. To this day, I still cannot get used to life without my children by my side. Story 43. Watching the children grow to hate their mother. When they are with her, they are forced to live a life full of double standards. Her rules are based on her emotional state in the moment. They cannot wait to be old enough to cut her out of their lives. Thankfully, they only have to see her the bare minimum. Story 44. Not seeing my children for a week is by far the worst thing for me. I see them once or twice during their mother's week and still struggle. Story 45. Having to work to rebuild everything I earned and owned for the first 38 years of my life. She got 100%. Being erased from my children's lives. Realizing I was free from oppression and servitude, and other than 38% of my post-tax income for 15 more years, I could do what I wanted with my life. Story 46. Seriously, after years of a sexless marriage, it was all the women I was dating and the sex I was having. I was staying out too late, and my social calendar was becoming unmanageable. I found the one after about a year, and now, 6 years in, we are getting married later this year. Story 47. The children are not around as often, and their visits are becoming less frequent over time. The former partner is manipulating them and changing who they are, leaving one feeling helpless to intervene. Story 48. Straight up. Online dating. Haven't done it yet, but starting to get lonely. September 8, 1973. Stupid. Can't meet in public places without being a creep. Red flags everywhere for me. No Facebook, no Instagram, no nothing. LinkedIn got that. What happened to meeting you at the supermarket or bar? Real life experiences. I'm not even a boomer. Stupid internet. Go away. Story 49. It has been a long time, so long that I have been married and have children since. The biggest challenge for me was not having someone to talk about my day with or to check in with. Even when things were not going well, it was always comforting to have someone to reach out to when a bad meeting occurred or when something good happened. Losing that was the toughest part. Story 50. It was strange having peace at home and enough money to pay for everything I wanted and needed. I got used to it, though. Story 51. 6 months after moving out, I relocated 1,200 miles away and started over. It was rewarding, but maintaining that mindset while married and then becoming single was a significant adjustment. I have been divorced for 8 years now and sometimes still act like a married husband. Story 52. Ending the marriage was the best thing in my life. Everything improved after that. I had processed the relationship ending years before it actually happened. It was only my stubbornness keeping it together. Story 53. I did not get a divorce, but my wife passed away. My experience is that it becomes easier to date as I get older. Story 54. Doing the things that I used to enjoy alone again. That was by far the hardest mental barrier I have faced. Starting to date again also is difficult, but not as much. Story 55. I cheated on my wife and moved in with my partner a year later. The large amount of money my divorce lawyer cost me was the most difficult part. I wish I could have just given that money to charity. It would have been better spent. Story 56. I am almost divorced after a 17-year marriage and a 22-year relationship. Dating or just being with anyone is frightening. I am not interested in that at all. After 22 years together and then having it all end, the last thing I want to do is date or get into another relationship. Story 57. The almost overwhelming attention from women. I had not been single since the mid-1990s. The dating and mating game had changed. There were many more women, over a wide age range, willing to be intimate with much less investment of time and effort. But the overall process was a lot of work, as I would be dating or sleeping with multiple women at the same time. I was grateful to have this as a problem. I got to know and be with many truly wonderful women. I genuinely loved many of them. Often I was in love with more than one woman at the same time. Several I loved deeply, so there was some emotional fatigue. I generally had anywhere from 6 to 10 regular partners at any given time, with some fairly long-term and others lasting only a week or two. Whenever I stopped seeing someone I had been with for a while, I felt a significant sense of loss. In 5 years after my divorce, I was with over 125 women who ranged in age from 19 to 42. I had to keep notes to remember basic facts about each one and recall the things we had done together, such as restaurants, outings, and events. It was easier to remember who liked what in the bedroom, but I even got this mixed up sometimes. I had to be careful not to call them by the wrong name. For several years, I did not get much sleep. My ex-wife and I had sex every single day during the last year of our marriage. It was the only part of our relationship that still worked. But with multiple partners, each sexual encounter was more involved and often lasted for hours. Story 58. It seems like most women are tired of dating, whereas I just want to date casually. I got divorced at 31 and still, 8 years later, feel disenchanted from my earlier life ideas about love, marriage, or life partnership. I've gradually realized that if I want to be with who I actually like, I need to get rich and enjoy a luxury lifestyle. Also, I compartmentalize my friendships from anyone I would date, as we're just not at the same life stage. Dating apps are too depressing to me, seeing that the vast majority of women exclusively seek monogamous commitment. Story 59. I was very surprised to discover that dating has turned into a toxic cesspool of materialism and people using each other, with hardly anyone interested in actually developing a connection. For a while, I thought that maybe it was a difference in ages. Maybe dating in my 40s meant that all the well-adjusted people were in stable long-term relationships. However, in comparing notes with friends in their 20s, I went to college very late, so I have friends that are a lot younger. It seems like their dating options are even worse and more toxic than mine. You heard it here, youngsters. Dating in the 2000s was actually a pleasant experience that people enjoyed. I actually knew people who did not want to be pinned down to one girlfriend because they liked being in the dating scene so much. I am very sorry you never got that experience. Story 60. Women today have many agendas they are pushing, all full of contempt and anger. It is really sickening. Story 61. Just like a regular breakup but longer, and then you end up putting this new title on a bunch of paperwork. Divorced. The dating scene has certainly changed, and I try to get some information before dating someone since there is so much baggage and red flags now in the dating pool. Divorced at 35. Story 62. When I decided not to prosecute after my ex-husband attempted to steal my identity by obtaining a credit card in my name and having it sent to his house, I was immediately notified by Credit Karma. I promptly closed the account but chose not to press charges because I did not want him to be part of my life anymore. It was a tough decision, but now my credit is locked, and I only unlock it when necessary. Story 63. Dating again. I have my 2 children, but that was not any different from being married to my wife because she did not do much with them. I did it all. Dating again was strange, and I dated a couple of difficult women. I have been remarried for 25 years now, and it is going great. Fortunately, my current wife is the opposite of my ex. Story 64. The custody arrangement, being cut out of 50% of my children's lives, created a silence when I got home that was deafening. It took years to get used to. I didn't find dating hard. I was with her for 11 years, married for about 9. I don't like bars, so online dating wasn't bad. I just had to get used to the fact that some people are more interesting in text than in person. I found that telling people I had children and asking about similar interests really helped. That led to a rewarding relationship that ended because she couldn't tolerate my ex-wife's behavior. She was unable to accept people treating children poorly, unfairly, gaslighting, manipulation, pitting them against each other, though nothing physical. When I started to call my ex out on things, it just got worse. Story 65, woof. Be like Chandler and not open that can. I'll be honest. I was in the military, have 2 kids and 2 ex-wives. I married them because of benefits and not for love. Young, dumb, and full of energy, as the saying goes. Growing up as a military child, I am used to change. So it was not too hard of a transition, except that I had to pay a large amount of money in child support. That really affected my life and, more importantly, my relationships. That happened in 2015, and I am still feeling the effects. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. It was cheaper to keep her. But I am glad I am not married to them. Long story. One I am willing to tell, but I am on my phone and do not feel like typing it all out on a phone keyboard. Story 66. I've never been in a relationship, but I am sure the most difficult adjustment must have been that the house is a lot quieter. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.